Guild Wars 2 new expansion is coming out this year, and probably it's gonna get announced in a few weeks. And with that, I want to talk about one specific interview that Grouch had a few months ago, the Guild Wars 2 game director, where they talked about instance content and what it has in the future, and that some people should be stoked for it. Subscribe to the channel for more content of this. Go to my coffee if you want to support me. Let's get into it. So, this quote that we have here talks about a little bit, about instance content. Instance content in Guild Wars 2 has always been a bit lacking in terms of quantity. Quality, you could argue a little bit as well, but in terms of quantity, it's always been not too much, right? Like what we get, like we used to get like one raid maybe a year, right? With only 3 bosses each time. Yeah, pre-events in between, but whatever. And comparing that to something like WoW, where you get like, what, 1 raid, maybe 2 a year with 8 bosses each? Yeah, it's not the same. Of course, Guild Wars 2 is not a raid instanced MMO. It's about open world. It's about achievements. It's about exploring, right? More than just grinding for gear and grinding for difficult bosses. But we do have them, and with the new strike missions that we got, for example, Temple of Phoebe, that is definitely the hardest we have ever gotten in Guild Wars 2, and definitely comparable to some mythic fights in World of Warcraft, and maybe even some ultimate fights, I think there are in Final Fantasy. It seems like they're moving towards this, hey, maybe we do some instance content here and there. Maybe we do make them a bit bigger, harder, and hopefully we get more of them. And that's where this question in this interview that we've gotten a few months back, talks about. I'll leave in the whole interview in the description down below. I even had a video about it back in the day, but here we go. As a follow-up on the endgame topic, could you share which activities you plan to focus on for future improvements and expansion? In the first half, and this is a response, in the first half of the next year, we'll be introducing the Temple of Phoebe Strike Mission Challenge mode, and a new 5-player Fractal Dungeon and Challenge mode. So the Fractal Dungeon, we're gonna get it in 2 weeks. The Phoebe Strike Mission, CM, we already got on it. It was practically a very well success. I would have some issues with the TM difficulty compared to the legendary one, but that's another topic. Beyond that, I think fans will be pretty stoked when they hear about our plans for endgame PvE content in our next expansion. Fans will be pretty stoked. Interesting. So, what does that mean? So we're gonna get some type of change? Some type of more content? Different content? What is it gonna be? It could really be a lot of stuff, and I'm sure we're gonna get some information when the announcement happens. But I think there's a lot of things it could be. And I do hope that is something good, because, we kind of want a bit of revitalization in terms of endgame content. So the first possibility, I think, is just we getting more strikes. We're getting 2 a year right now. Not enough, honestly, for instance content. And honestly, sometimes not enough for story. As the strikes are being made out of the story content we get, getting that little, honestly, that little instances of, bosses in story instances, I think it's good. Getting more story instances with bosses would be a great idea for story and for instance content. It's definitely not the biggest change that we could ever have, but it's definitely not bad either. More fractals. We're only getting 1 a year. Not enough either. For 5-month content, we should be getting more than that. I think at least 2 would be nice. And honestly, fractals probably are more important than raids or strikes, to be honest, just because of... And there's probably way more people playing them, as they're easier to get into, there's a better difficulty setting on them, and you only need 5 people, so it's easier to make groups with them. More dungeons? Probably not gonna happen. That is definitely... Dungeons seem to be like an abandoned content, right? I don't think it's gonna happen. And even in the same interview, they actually talk about how they don't have anything to talk about dungeons. Now, they could be just misdirecting, but I doubt they would. And they would at least be like, oh, maybe, who knows? Specifically, if they're literally talking about, like, hey, we're gonna get, they're actually saying, hey, we're gonna get something, right? So, yeah. I don't think so. Instability. Oh, yeah, new instabilities. An instabilities rework. We did get something like that in Fractals. I think it was like a year back. We got like some reworks on those. I don't think that would be enough for people to get really stoked over things and be excited. It would be nice, but honestly, it would only be nice if they pair it with something else. Like, something like a Mythic Plus system, a new tier 5 or infinite scaling, or maybe a time or something to make it so you have more ways to make the fractals feel different while also having new fractals. Making a system like Mythic Plus has in WoW would make it so all the veterans can really push their limits and do some insane stuff, while the players that normally play, just chill, right? And they can just chill in tier 4, do their normal dailies, and be done with it, right? Now it would be a lot of work to do that, as honestly fractals are very much very much, they don't really work with the power creep we have right now. It just doesn't work very well. You can just ignore most of the mechanics in fractals by just kind of pulsing boons randomly, and it makes it so honestly the fractals are just filled with insane amount of just garbage in the ground and just everything spamming on you, and it's just not very well designed. Unless they really make it from the ground up, it would be a bit bad. It would be a bit hard to do it. They could, but the problem is there's also a lot of people who really enjoy fractals the way they are. So imagine changing it for everyone to be mad at you because you changed it and you fixed it, right? Honestly, it's better to just do another type of fan-man content. And that leads me to the next one. We could get another type of fan-man content, something like DRMs, right? But well done, right? Something like, hey, in the story steps are happening this dungeon-like thing in open world or whatever, and then those get transformed into an actual instance content. Instance where you actually play with your friends to every day, daily or weekly or whatever, to get certain rewards. And that way you have an easy mode on the story and you have the hard mode on normal mode or whatever in the actual instance, right? Now, and I always said this, DRMs, ground response missions, were a good system, just poorly executed. The idea is cool, put story instances where you actually talk to the NPCs inside of the dungeon. That's cool. That's pretty cool, right? And you get a lot of them as well. That's awesome. They're pretty easy to do. The problem is that they were not that fun for most people. They were not rather rewarding either. It was a bit scuffed, right? But they learned from that, and they could actually maybe this time do it well. Even something like retailing. Wow, they're doing delves, which is essentially just that, honestly, but with a bit more roguelike type of systems inside of it, things that you can collect to make yourself more powerful inside of the delve, inside of their version of DRMs, and you can do it solo or with with a lot of people. That's pretty great. And that leads me to the next one. Maybe a system like a roguelike solo version that you can play also with other people inside of Guild Wars 2 would be very fun. Honestly, this game would actually benefit a lot from a system like that. Something like Torghast, right? Imagine just this big tower, or maybe this dungeon, or maybe multiple dungeons, that once you start progressing through it, it gets harder and harder, but you also get more powerful during it. You get different powers that interact with your boons and your class, and depending on your class and the boons that you give and the way that you work and the weapon you have, you'll pick and choose the ones that work for you. That'll be insanely fun. For build making in Guild Wars 2, it's super cool, and it's not really utilized that much. Well, I guess in PvP and War vs. World it is, but in raids, not so much. So honestly, a system of this would be absolutely great, I think. Yeah, I think that'll be great. It will be a lot of work, but maybe it's worth it. And honestly, sometimes, as I said before, I know that everyone's like, oh, well, they should just focus on fixing everything before they start something new. Well, the thing is, sometimes people don't want their old thing to be fixed. Just think about how many people get mad of dungeon changes or fractal changes and stuff like this. Sometimes it's better to just leave it there for the people who like it, move on and do something new. Another one, and I think this is probably the most likely one, is a new raid. A new raid, Wing 8. People have been asking for that a long time ago. People are very excited for the idea of a new raid, as strikes are cool and everything, but they like the idea of a raid, having an environment and very cool design and story and everything. They just love that. But if they wanted to do that, they would have to do a rework of the old raids and get an easy mode on them. As honestly, it's just kind of hard to get into raids. It's just hard. I know there's a lot of discords that you can get into to, blast there, and you definitely can, and it's definitely doable, but not having an easy mode is something that just completely makes it super, super hard for people to get into it, to experience the story, and to get invested into raid. And that is not a good thing. And they want to plan in and just keep going and get another thing, another raid. They have to make the systems work for that as well. They just can't. Otherwise, it was gonna get another raid that is just completed because only people that actually know how to play the game can play it, and that's just not. It doesn't make any sense. Also, ideally, it would be story that you can actually, because you have an easy mode, actually pairs with the actual expansion, so you have even more story for lore enthusiasts. That would actually be great as well. Yeah, I think. But then also, what would happen with strikes? Do we just not get any strikes? Do we still get 2? So we get 2 strikes and the raid every year? That would be pretty awesome. That would be like what, 6 bosses or 5 bosses, 5 to 6 bosses every year, dude. The instance content, scene in here would probably start popping off if that was the case. It's honestly, we have no idea what it could be, but there's a lot of possibilities and other things that, could actually work pretty well for Guild Wars 2. And I've always thought, hey, just because of how much effort they put into instance content and how little return they give it to them, I was thinking like, oh, maybe they should just, not do that and just focus on what they actually do correctly, which is open world. But they really seem to have been getting some cool stuff done with something like, what is the word? With CRCM. And I'm guessing they did put some effort into it, but not as much as the other stuff, I guess. So, and at the end of the day, there's just gonna be, if you do have instance content in your game, you're gonna bring an audience of people that will indeed not be there if you didn't have the instance content. Having a little bit of everything is probably a pretty good idea. Sometimes it's definitely better to just focus on what you do well instead, but they really seem committed to it, so I'm guessing that they really want instance content to work in this game. And to be fair, not having instance content in your MMORPG, it is a hard thing to sell to people. So hopefully, whatever this is a big thing. It works well, and it makes people talk about the game as well. We'll see. Definitely tell me what you guys think could be in the comments down below. Tell me if my options are bad. Tell me if you think they're good. Tell me if you think they're reasonable. Tell me if there's anything else that I missed or that you would think is better for the game. And of course, subscribe to the channel. Go to my coffee if you want to support me. Go to my Twitch and follow me there to watch me live. And see you guys around. Love you all. Bye.